following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Hey everybody, welcome in. It's time to discuss AFC and NFC West draft needs. The draft is only a couple days away, and we are here to break it all down for you. We're going to talk about the defending AFC and NFL champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. What do they still need to put them back over the top and make a return trip? What do the Chargers need to do to push themselves over the top and possibly overtake the Chiefs? Is there anything the Broncos can do to rewrite the ship and get themselves relevant? And the NFC, we've got the 49ers coming off a disastrous end of the season with their quarterback collapse due to health issues. What do they need so that they can make a run and get themselves back where they felt they should have been all year last year? All that and more here coming up right now on Belly Up Fantasy Live.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. And these guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. There's the whistle. That means it is time for Belly Up Fantasy Live. Welcome in, everybody. I'm Chase Thornton, coming to you, as always, from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar here. And we are going to talk some AFC, NFC West draft needs here for fantasy purposes. Draft coming up here this Thursday. Looking forward to it. I hope you guys all are too. I'm ready to get back to talking and dealing with some actual football after the kind of dead zone that we've had here. Bringing in right now, joining me as always, Mr. Kevin Wilson. Kevin, how we doing this morning?
We're doing good, Chase, and it's good to be here. We had a great time last weekend, celebrate my mom's birthday, and but we're back now, and we're ready to get busy. There's certainly a lot to talk about.
No, it's good to have you back. Good to have you in. We missed you last week, but you're back just in time to talk about your team, the Seattle Seahawks, and their division, the NFC West. We're talking about both. Yeah, there it is. We're talking about the Wests today. As we said, we've got the defending AFC champions here in the Chiefs. We've got a team that looked like they were going to be meeting them in the Super Bowl, and the 49ers. The Seahawks, of course, had a good run last year, and then it kind of fell apart on them after they went to Germany. But we've got some contending teams here in the West, and
That's right.
There are some high-powered offenses, but there are definitely some holes, and some of them that have come up quite recently. We'll talk about this, when we bring up the Chargers, but obviously high-powered offense in Los Angeles, but Keenan Allen getting a little bit older. They do not have a very deep wide receiver depth chart. Austin Eckler requesting a trade, which kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people and shocked a lot of people. On top of that, we've got your team, the Seahawks, who, as always, stop me if you've heard this, but they're looking for offensive line help. There's some speculation about whether they could take a quarterback if one of the top guys falls to them somehow.
Stop it.
And they have a very top-heavy but not very deep wide receiver core themselves. We've got the Rams trying to right the ship after a long stretch of F them picks. They don't have anything real high to try and get things going here, but they've got needs as well. So a lot to talk about. Let's start it off with the AFC West, and we'll start it off with those Kansas City Chiefs here. Defending AFC champions, defending Super Bowl champions. Great game against the Philadelphia Eagles there, this past Super Bowl. You're talking about a team here with Patrick Mahomes, possibly the best quarterback in the league right now. I don't think there's a giant argument there. You can debate it, but you're not going to get.
Yeah, if you debate it, you're
nobody's pushing him out of the top three. I would think right now.
No.
But you're talking about a team here that has the, according to PFF, Pro Football Focus rankings last season, they had the number 4 offensive line. You're talking about a team that had the number 8 DST in fantasy football last season. You're talking about a team that's pretty strong across the board. Now, it's a team that when they lost Tyreek Hill, everybody kind of went up in arms. Oh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. They just kind of kept throwing the ball to Travis Kelce, and things kind of, matriculated from there. But they do lose Juju Smith-Schuster now this offseason. Travis Kelce is another year older. They lost tackle Orlando Brown, letting him go. Now they did bring in Jawan Taylor to ostensibly replace him from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But this is a team that, despite being so powerful, they do have a couple of needs here. I would argue that wide receiver is still a need for them.
Absolutely.
Even if Kadarius Toney finally looks like the Kadarius Toney we've all thought he was supposed to look like. We saw glimpses of it last year. He looked much better after he went to Kansas City. He was actually healthier, which is a relative term with Kadarius Toney after he got there. But they do also have Sky Moore coming back. They still have Justin Ross, who was a hyped prospect until the neck issue cropped up on him, but we didn't even get to see him last season. So there are possibilities there, but I see wide receiver as a need for this team. What do you see as the biggest need, at least fantasy wise, for the Kansas City Chiefs next season?
Well, it would be nice. I think you're 100% right when it comes to the wide receiver position, because if we're waiting for some of these guys to explode, we might want to hold off on that, health-wise and everything else. And they are, of course, they're defending champions, so they're at the back end of the first round. So they can, and Sky Moore, we thought there would be a lot more coming out of him. So I'm not exactly confident that we're going to see big growths out of these wide receivers. So I think at number 31, they definitely need to look at wide receiver position, because they don't, as you said, they don't have a lot of needs elsewhere. So if they get a wide receiver, and they could do some things. Of course, they're the champions. We know that. So at number 31, I have, let's see here, Jalen Hyatt is my guy that I think goes over there, wide receiver over out of Tennessee. And he's a boom or bust kind of wide receiver. And he's definitely one of, he could go to Kansas City and hook up with the best quarterback in the land, as we mentioned. So I think he can bring out the potential that he has, and he could really help him out a lot.
Definitely, yeah. And he's a guy that it's not as touted a wide receiver class as we had last season.
No, it's not nearly as that.
No, this year it's actually the tight end draft.
Right.
According to everybody's calculations here.
Yeah. Me, everybody. Yeah.
Right. Which is another. It's another position that I think they could look at. They should look at probably for the future.
Right. Because
but we'll talk about that.
We all know the greatest tight end in the world can't play forever.
He can't live forever. Yeah. Right. Or hopefully he lives forever, but he can't play forever. Right. Probably. Yeah. No. The wide receiver depth chart there, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I've seen plenty of him. Yeah. I think we know who he is at this point.
MVS, I can't begin to tell you.
He's not a number one wide receiver. He's not a number one,
not a number two, maybe even not a number three.
Yeah, he's much more of a 2A, 2B kind of. He's that guy you want to take a shot with a couple of times a game, but he's not a number one capable wide receiver. He's just not. And he's capable of playing in the NFL. He's a decent wide receiver, decent player in the NFL. He's better at football than I am, but he's just not a number one wide receiver.
Right. And if he wasn't a number one wide receiver with Aaron Rodgers, then he's not going to be one.
No, exactly. And, Kadarius Toney, I like what Kadarius Toney can bring. I think he showed some flashes last season.
If he could just stay healthy, but putting all your chips with Kadarius Toney is not a winning prospect.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a big gamble. There's long odds there that he stays healthy. Now, he did look good last season.
If he could move down in the pecking order, then I think they really might have something going on.
If you're not counting in terms of building a wide receiver depth chart for your real life football team, if you're not counting on Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdez-Scantling to be your top two guys, right? You've got some talent on that
right.
But right now they're counting on them as the top two.
Yeah, don't make them number two or any of that.
Sky Moore, we'll see. We don't know yet really what we have.
We don't know, and all the hype that I thought we'd get a lot more out of Sky Moore with, once again, you got the greatest quarterback in the world and you can't develop. That's red flags to me.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if he can have some growth this year and make a leap, but with Tony there kind of taking some of his shine probably. Plus they do bring in Richie James, who was kind of a surprise stabilizer for the New York Giants last season. When they brought him in, they have Justin Watson. They've got Justin Ross. Like we said, they brought in Emir Smith-Marset, who, the ex-Viking. They've got a lot of guys on this roster right now in this wide receiver room that are just guys and B, unknown guys that you really can't count on seeing. You can't count on the idea that this is going to be you're going to be able to find a 1 and a 2 out of this group here. Now, they have the luxury of Travis Kelce, who kind of is their wide receiver 1 by default, but also playing tight end for them, obviously. But I think bringing somebody in from this draft class that could inject some playmaking ability to that wide receiver room.
They got to.
Yeah, that would really help. But again, we look at, and I like your idea, Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt's somebody who should be there at the end of the first round for them.
Right.
He's kind of he's right on that day 1, day 2 line there, where if they like him and if he's their guy, hey, get him. You're spending the last pick in the first round. You're not blowing
you look
a top
at a
10
guy
pick.
that could score touchdowns. He was second in all of FBS in touchdowns for a wide receiver last year.
Right. No, and coming from a team that surprised a lot of people in the SEC this year.
Yep, they threw the football all over the place.
Yes, they did. Tight end, though, I really do think should be a consideration for them. And I don't say that in terms of, and I realize that for a fantasy program that any tight end they draft this year, barring some kind of catastrophic, we don't even want to put it into the atmosphere.
Yeah. Don't put that into, so no dust will settle on that.
But behind Travis Kelce,
we don't want it to mature at all.
Noah Gray, Blake Bell, Jody Fortson, they've got a solid tight end room in terms of actual football players. But none of those guys looks like he's going to be able to be Travis Kelce if and when Travis Kelce is no longer the tight end 1 in Kansas City. With this being such a strong and such a deep tight end class, there's a possibility they could go out and get a playmaker at that tight end position for the future to be the heir apparent. And
they could wait on that and still get that.
Right. They don't have to even spend. I mean, we've joked about, it's the 31st because of the Miami debacle there, but it's the last pick in the first round, but they don't even have to use that to be able to wait and get possible playmaking tight end with the plethora of options that's out there this season. So is there a name that you think, or is that a position you think they should look at? What's your take on tight end in the draft for Kansas City?
Well, I think you nailed it, because there are a lot of names that we can bring up for them. And one of the guys that I think we could talk about is Will Mallory out of Miami, who is a consistent but not explosive guy. They've got the explosive guy at tight end already, of course. And if they can bring in a guy that's consistent, then maybe that's what they need. And they can get him later on in the draft. He's a guy that's got 4.54 speed out of the tight end spot. So if they decide to do that, I think that'd be fine, because you could wait around maybe third round. They could take him and do some things with their second pick, and they could do that. So, because they could use their second pick on a cornerback,
sure,
and still get the third round tight end that we're talking about. I think that would be a successful draft for them.
Yeah, there you go. There's so many options. There's so many options at that tight end position from this draft. And the nice thing, we've brought it up a couple of times now. They're the defending national champion, the defending NFL champions. They're the Super Bowl champs. They have the luxury of being able to take, for the most part, luxury picks. They don't have a ton of holes on this team.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, if you want to wait and take a shot at your guy, yeah, you don't have to trade up or stretch to get a tight end if you want.
Absolutely not in this draft.
Got the best tight end in the game already. You know, B, it's a deep and it's a luxury pick anyway. You can afford to take a guy that you're excited about his athleticism maybe, but not necessarily ready to jump in right away. And that's true. Honestly, it's true at tight end. It's probably true at wide receiver too, even though they don't have a strong wide receiver room in terms of, you know, a top 1 and 2. They didn't necessarily have the best wide receiver room in the league last season. We all thought they'd collapse without Tyreek Hill, and Patrick Mahomes just comes out and MVPs all over the place, and there we have it. The one other position I would like to see them take a look at, this is a team that had, as I said, the number 4 offensive line in the league last season, according to PFF. But they lose Orlando Brown. They bring in Jawan Taylor. They're going to put him at left tackle to protect the game's most valuable asset in Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
I would like to see them look at tackle in this draft at some point.
And there are some tackles that we could talk about.
Yeah,
not so much maybe interior linemen, but tackles, yes.
Yeah, no, this is, and we'll bring this up later because there are a couple of teams in the West here in both conferences. There are some teams that really need some help on the interior offensive line, and unfortunately, this is one of the weakest interior offensive line drafts that we've seen in the last couple of years.
We're only going to see probably 2 go in the first round, I'm suspecting.
And that's a big if. Yeah, exactly. Now there's a bunch of day 2 type guys, but that's the problem. There's a bunch of day 2 type guys. Do you really want to blow your first round pick on a day 2 type guy, even if it's a need? I mean, if you're doing BPA, best player available kind of thing, and trying to set your program up for long-term success, you're not looking at probably most of these interior guys in the first round. But at tackle, yeah, there are more options. And again, this is a team that was strong enough on the offensive line and is strong enough everywhere else that they may be able to take a little bit more of an athletic project type guy at tackle, where if you get one of the guys that's available at 31, because it's pick 30, it's 32nd pick, but it's the 31st pick that's going to be taken because of the Dolphins not having their pick at 21. But it's the kind of draft where they can afford to take a guy who's maybe a little bit more of a project. If he can't start week 1, that's okay if they can develop the guy. But yeah, tackle is a position I would really like to see them take. Is there a guy that you maybe have targeted for them at the end of the first round, or
there's
or
a guy
in the second?
I'm interested to see. Maybe not at the end of the first round, but there's a guy that I think either they or the 49ers, which we could talk about, which we're going to talk about. And that's the guy I'm talking about is Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle out of BYU. And so he's 6'8", 302. He's huge. And his offensive athleticism at offensive tackle is number 1. So there's a guy right there that if they do what we're saying, they take that wide receiver at the first round, they could get somebody like Blake and develop him. He's a guy he's he's predicted to be starting off maybe as a backup, but could develop into a solid starter. So there's a guy that you can, if you're Kansas City, and bring them up and get them seasoned and everything else, plug them in. There's your offensive line right there.
And a guy who's 6'8" and athletic is a hell of a luxury to have in the NFL on the offensive line. And if they bring him in as a project, I mean, yeah, they've even got time possibly and they've got a little bit of versatility to be able to see if that guy is whoever they bring in, whether it's him or anyone else. Do we have a left tackle? Do we have a right tackle? Because Jawan Taylor,
he's a guy that's played both in his college career. So
exactly.
They could put him at right. They could put him at left.
see where he works out, and see where Jawan Taylor works out as they bring him in from Jacksonville as well. Is he truly your left tackle, or do you need to stick him on the right? So they've got some options depending on whom they bring in. But yeah, I think those are the three positions, fantasy wise. Those are the three positions I'd like to see them hammer home on. Obviously, they don't need a quarterback. I think Isaiah Pacheco looks like a solid running back, especially for what they want to do.
Right.
We'll see what
and
happens
you
going
don't
forward
want to
with
see
Clyde
Patrick
Edwards-Helaire.
Mahomes keep getting hammered.
No,
Right.
They need to keep him protected.
One hammer might be all it takes. So you got to protect him.
So looking now at the second place team in that division from last season, the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Los Angeles Chargers, again, high-powered offense here, but some holes here. They only had the 17th ranked offensive line last season. So, I mean, they're middle of the pack there. Didn't have quite the defensive season that we all kind of wanted to see out of them. Now, some of that was injuries. They brought in some pretty high-profile names that weren't able to see the field much for them in that. But this is one of the best top 2 wide receiver rooms in the league.
Right.
But after that, it gets a little shaky. And honestly, they've got a top 4. They bring back Jalen Guyton. They just re-signed him. Josh Palmer is a guy whom I like.
Has done it.
Has done it. And actually, both of those guys. Now, Guyton is nice for a deep threat, but hasn't been overly consistent. But we've got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, a couple of twin towers on the outside
could
there.
Just stay on the field.
But they need to both be able to stay on the field. Exactly. And after that, and Allen has a contract that they are not locked into him for long-term here now. In fact, they're not really all that. They're not locked into him this season if they want to save some money. Now it's pretty late in the game to be talking about that.
I think that would be crazy to move on from him right now, but yeah.
But it's a possibility, depending on what happens here with the rest of their roster. So wide receiver is a position they could look to go, especially like, say, for that slot type guy. But running back all of a sudden looks like another direction this team probably needs to go with Austin Eckler. Now, Austin Eckler requests the trade, and we haven't heard a ton about that.
Haven't heard
lately.
Much since he said that.
Right. And some of that.
So we don't know what's going on with that. So I expect he'll return.
I expect he'll be back, but he is getting older for one at a bad position to get older at. There's no good place to get old, but running back is a position where you get old quick, and it happens quickly. But he's already requested a trade, so we're not sure how happy he is being there. Behind him, they've got Kelly, they've got Isaiah Spiller, last year's draft pick, who did not turn out to really be as much as I think a lot of us wanted him to be for Los Angeles. So between those two positions, between wide receiver and running back, which one do you think is A, the bigger need, and B, which direction do you think that they will go, or which one do you think they will address?
It depends on how the first round shakes out. I think he'll be gone, but what would happen? Let's say Bijan Robinson is sitting there. Okay, so
he's such a wild card in this whole thing.
Attached to the Chargers, and I don't think he'll be there. So I might just be blowing smoke right now. But if he is sitting there at 21, he's coming off the board, I think. So if not, then they need to go ahead and hold off on the because there aren't any running backs I see coming off the board in the first round.
No, so other than Robinson, no.
Yeah. Right. So if they decide to go wide receiver, and maybe they decide, well, there's no great wide receivers either here. So maybe when they're on the clock at 54, I got Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina.
There you go.
Going over there. You talk about the slot. You just talked about that a minute ago. And he's a slot receiver. He's got quickness out of the slot.
And a playmaker.
So that solves all kinds of problems for them. So if they go and get him in, like I said, at pick 54, there's lots and lots of upside to me there.
Right. And the Chargers are the first team to benefit from the Dolphins debacle and losing their draft pick. Chargers picking at 22 are actually going to get the 21st guy now if they stay put. Yeah, now they've been attached to Bijan Robinson in a lot of mock drafts I've seen, but that's assuming the dude gets there.
Still sitting there, but if he is,
well,
go get him.
And that's the thing. I mean, luckily for the Chargers, at least, they are in front of, for the time being, they're in front of the Dallas Cowboys, who are also reportedly enamored with Bijan. I think everybody's enamored with Bijan. I just don't think everybody necessarily has a need, and I don't think everybody wants to take a running back in the first round, especially as high as some of these teams could, would have to take him.
If Philadelphia takes him, that's the team that I see that will take all of this completely off the table.
Right.
They could take him at
Robinson is
number 10.
Yeah, he's such a wild card in this whole thing because, if he goes, he's good enough to go in the top 10.
Right.
Who needs him up there necessarily?
This was 20 years ago, he'd come off the board.
Oh, he'd be a top 5 pick.
Absolutely.
20 years ago.
It's not even that long ago because we're talking about Zeke. It's not been that long ago since he went off the board in the top 5.
And and we know, like we said, we know Dallas loves their running backs, but they love their early guys.
Yeah, the Cowboys are going to have to come off of that number 26 spot to get
if they want Bijan, I think they probably do. I don't think that they can afford to wait quite that long.
I don't either.
But Bijan would be a hell of a pick if he fell that far, or if they jumped up to get him. If they jumped up to get him, though, what happens with Austin Eckler then?
Well, maybe nothing, because he's the guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield.
So maybe this is
not the greatest thing if you own Austin. Let's say this happens and you own Austin Eckler in Dynasty. Maybe that's not the best thing that could happen, because obviously that's going to cut into his production. So, but
yeah, it's a frustrating thing to think about.
Right. If you own him, which I don't. So,
I do actually in one league.
Okay. So, but we're talking about if Robinson could go to the Chargers, there's all kinds of upside for him. I think if he went to the Philadelphia, there's upside there too.
Oh, I think that's the dream scenario for him and for them.
If he winds up in LA.
If Robinson ends up with the Chargers, it's kind of a 1-year bummer in terms of I don't think you get that immediate explosive impact that you would get if he goes to, say, obviously Philadelphia, because I think what it does is it takes a couple of top 10 running backs and moves them into the running back 2 range, because I think I don't think that either of Austin Eckler's value as one of the top 2 or 3 fantasy running backs the last several years, his value is that he runs the ball for them and he catches the ball for them. If you bring in Bijan Robinson, now Bijan Robinson, who can do it all too, ostensibly,
right?
Bijan is not being asked to do it all.
An issue for Austin Eckler,
and Eckler is not being asked to do it all. And Eckler's not being asked to do. He's being asked to do even less of the running than he already was doing. So I think what you do is you take if Bijan goes to LA, it takes a couple of top 10 running backs and actually moves them back into running back 2 territory for this season, depending on whether or not they keep Austin Eckler. If Eckler is out the door, or obviously if they don't end up getting Bijan, this whole point's moot. But that's a hell of a scenario to think about there. Moving on farther down the rankings here in the AFC West, the Las Vegas Raiders coming up next.
Right.
This is a team that surprised, had a surprisingly successful offensive line last season. Number 10 ranked from PFF.
If they didn't have that, it kind of fell apart anyway.
Right.
But it would have been an abject disaster area. Right. Cactus in the desert and all that sort of thing if it wasn't for that.
Now, it's also the team that had the number 31 ranked DST in fantasy football.
Right.
And there are a ton of upgrades they could make on that side of the ball that would help everybody.
Right. There are.
But offensively here now, on that offensive line, the one real kind of weakness that they have is probably on the interior at the guard positions. Now, unfortunately,
as we just talked about,
this is not a great draft for guards. You are not taking somebody with the number 7 overall pick.
You're not
taking an interior offensive lineman on this draft. Now, when you get to round 2, 7, pick 7 in round 2. Now we're talking much more the wheelhouse for taking some of the top prospects on the interior offensive line. They do need a guard. Alex Bars was their right guard, was probably their weakest point on their offensive line last season, and woefully so. That's a spot where now they could look at taking somebody like Michael Schmitz from Minnesota. If Osiris Torrance somehow happened to still be there, who is the hands down top offensive line interior prospect in this draft, if he somehow happened to still be there at 2-7, that would be a guy that would be fun to see there, blocking for Josh Jacobs and possibly Zamir White in the future. Offensive guard is one position I think they could go, but tight end to me seems to be a big need for this team. You went from having a relative position of strength. Excellent. Couple of relative strength guys there in terms of Darren Waller. Couldn't stay healthy a lot for them, but was an absolute beast of a weapon when he was healthy and now moves on to New York. And Foster Moreau, who was a very good and capable backup tight end.
Started to like him and then didn't.
Yeah. Well, and now not only did he enter free agency, but then takes the physical with the New Orleans Saints, I believe it was, finds out that he has cancer. He's going to be taking the year off, at least the year off, try and get himself healthy and well. And we wish him all the best.
So, yeah.
But you went from having 2 guys that made that room a relative strength on your team to now they bring in Austin Hooper, they bring in OJ Howard, who are fine football players in real life. Yeah. I'm sure their mothers love them.
I'm sure I'm not getting excited over that.
But no, they are not the playmakers that you had in Darren Waller or the steady, solid presence that you had in Foster Moreau. Deep tight end draft. You said you had a couple of names for me. Let's hear what you think they could do. This is a team again that's picking with they have the number 7 pick in round 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so I think that there are tight ends, as we talked about. So I don't think they go anywhere in that area in the first or second round. Third round comes around, a couple of names. One's Payne Durham, Purdue tight end. Okay. And he has a 20% share in his career at Purdue at all their touchdowns, all of them. So he's a guy that can catch the ball. He's a guy that can score the ball. And so if that doesn't excite anybody, then another Big Ten tight end is Sam Laporta out of Iowa.
Sam Laporta.
Who is a little undersized, but I think that he can do some things at the tight end position and wouldn't cost nearly as much as some of these others that we could talk about. That either of those 2 guys, I think, would be a good addition to that tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Laporta was about the best thing going for the Iowa offense here.
Right.
You're talking about, 6'4", 249. So, he's not a giant, but at the same time, the way that he broke 14 tackles, last season.
Right.
You can't teach that. That's something that you've either got the gigantic size or you've got the know-how to make it happen. Not coming from a giant pass-heavy offense there in Iowa, but we've seen other Iowa tight ends move on. George Kittle, anybody? We've seen other Iowa tight ends move on and have success in the league here. He's the number 5 ranked. He's somewhere around number 5 ranked tight end prospect there. Possibility that he is still there for them, especially picking at the top of the 3rd round like that. He is a day 2 prospect, I think, Sam Laporta, but he would be a real fun one to watch. He could be a real fun one to watch.
May not be there in the 3rd.
He may not be there in the 3rd. May not be there in the 3rd.
Go ahead and get him.
Oh, if he is, he's a jump on that kind of guy.
Yeah,
definitely.
That's when you go, you grab your card and you slam it into the commissioner's hand or whoever it is that's doing it at that time. Call it.
No, I definitely think that's the one. They brought in Jacoby Myers, who now can be a number 2, doesn't have to try and be a number 1 guy anymore. They bring in Jacoby Myers. He can be the number 2 guy behind Devontae Adams. They still have Hunter Renfrow, who just 2 years ago was a top 12 fantasy wide receiver because of his PPR prowess here. He can catch a lot of balls for you and move the sticks. So I don't think that they need to look at wide receiver. I hope they don't fall into that old Raider trap of just looking at the fastest guy on the board and thinking that they should take him number 1 overall. Tight end would be the position that I really would like to see them.
I would like to see that. And, one of the guys that because we talked about offensive guard isn't big, but Peter Skoronski, if I'm saying that correctly, can play tackle or guard. So number 7, he's a guy that
he's one of those classic tackle prospects with short arms that everybody thinks, well, he's got short arms, he's got to move inside. Well, we've seen other guys with short arms. If you can play football, you can play football, dude.
Right. And so
there's plenty of dudes with long arms that can't play tackle.
Really help them if they can get him at guard.
That would be fun. I have seen now if somehow now they brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously lost Derek Carr, let him go.
Right.
But they also lose Jarrett Stidham. They let him sign with the Denver Broncos, who we'll talk about here in 2 seconds. But they bring in Garoppolo if one of the top 4 guys, one of the top 4 quarterback prospects. We're probably talking more about Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, but if one of those 2 guys is there at 7 somehow, do they take him and should they?
Those are the 2 names that I've seen attached to the Raiders more than any other name that we could talk about right now.
Right.
At number 7, because if you look at it, there's going to be at least three quarterbacks off the board, at least 3. And then you got Will Anderson, and then you've got whatever we're going to talk about Seattle in a minute, but they're not taking a quarterback. So I think one of those 2 guys could very possibly be sitting there at number 7. And there's a couple of guys that I think because of the Raiders that, because Anthony Richardson's got all kinds of flags on him, even though he had a great pro day and whatever else. And so, and Will Levitt, I think that he could be an excellent quarterback, but at number 7, I think that's kind of stretching it just a little bit. But the Raiders are the team that I could see making that pick.
Oh yeah, if one of the top 4 guys falls, I could see that. I don't think they move up. I don't think they try to move up. I don't think they have to move up. They brought in Jimmy G. Jimmy G, for all of his trials and tribulations, is a good, solid quarterback. He is not a step down. He's basically a lateral move from Derek Carr, right? And now they weren't going necessarily anywhere with Derek Carr, but were they? I mean, they're not going to go anywhere with if they get Bryce Young. Heck, if they, I don't want to be too hyperbolic here, but I mean, if they could move Patrick Mahomes across the AFC West, I'm not necessarily sure that this team's going anywhere just yet. Okay.
No,
but I mean, if one of the top guys is there, why not? Why not? It's too early to jump on, say, Hendon Hooker if the top 4 guys are gone.
And that's the guy right there, 2nd round pick. That makes more sense to me.
If he were there at 2-7. Yeah.
So,
if he's there at 2-7, jump on it. Or if you want to move up off of 2-7 to come get him in the back end of the 1st round somehow, that makes much more sense to me from a Raider standpoint.
It does to me too. And he's a guy who, he's got upside. He just has to be healthy, and you can get him and not. And if it doesn't work out, it's not nearly as bad as if you pick number 7 and it doesn't work out.
And flop on that and fail on that.
Right.
I agree completely.
That's the Jets all about that.
All right, before we move on and talk about the Broncos, wrap up the AFC West here. What are you drinking this morning? You drinking anything this morning? You got anything?
I am drinking. I've got some Twisted Berry Bud Light Seltzer going on right here.
There we go. Going light and fresh for the morning.
We get, it's still morning. All right. So, want to be doubling down, too much in the morning. So
I am drinking a Hakon Honeybock from Earth Rider. It's a brewery up here in Superior Duluth area. And man, I love it. I like a Bach anyway. And Bach, I like everything Earth Rider, everything I've had of Earth Rider I really like, but man, this was a bold choice for the morning. I'll tell you that. It's a little strong, But heck yeah, man, I'm going to fire up another one here in the second half. All right.
Okay.
So we'll move on to the Broncos here. And the Broncos, a team that disappointed a lot of people last year. They don't have a ton of high draft
Disappointed
capital.
Everybody,
because of the Russell Wilson trade. They are out of the first round from now until the river freezes
to the
over.
end of time.
Right. They do have back-to-back selections here early in the third round. That's their first picks. 3, 4, and 3, 5 are their first picks at the moment. And it's a team with holes. And it's a team that's been linked to trading one of their star wide receivers in star is a relative term, but Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. They've got Tim Patrick coming back off of injury here. But Javonte Williams, they're what everybody in fantasy wants to be star stud running back, coming off a major knee injury here. He may not be ready for the start of the season. They do bring in Samaje Perine, but running back, Perine is not necessarily young. He's been more of a pass catcher in his career, although he has shown at times that he can handle the load for short stretches. He's not Javonte Williams if Javonte Williams is healthy. But honestly, right now, Javonte Williams is not Javonte Williams because he's not healthy. Right. So running back, probably the one position that they have in terms of the skill positions on offense that they have a absolute need at. Do you see them going there? Do you see them trying to go there, trade up for it? I mean, they're not picking until the third round. So they're not having to waste, quote unquote, draft capital early in the draft on that.
No.
Do you think that that's a position they could go with one of those 2 third round picks?
I think so, because as you mentioned, that if they're not the worst running back room, they're in contention for it.
Without Williams, definitely.
Absolutely. So, and if they're at number 3, as you mentioned, in the third round, they're just some names that you could throw at them. And there's no running backs that really blows your doors off other than Bijan Robinson to me. So, and there are some guys though that could do some damage, and one of those is one of them from your conference. That's Chase Brown out of Illinois, and so they can get him in the later stages of the draft. And another guy, if you want to go a little bit below the star teams, and Dwayne McBride out of UAB. All right, UAB down there, not Alabama per se, okay, but he plays in Alabama, so maybe he knows a little bit something about running the football. So that's some of those guys right in that range would be available to them, and you wouldn't have to trade up, and give up more assets because they've already given up the asset. Right. So I don't think that would be productive for them to try and don't become the Rams and don't have a first round pick. We're going to talk about them. So, so that's something that they could do. And because their defense, they're strong on defense. They've got the skilled offensive positions.
Right. No,
right. And they've got a good defense. They've got a good defense. All he has to do is, stop, doing, whatever it is, just whatever he's doing over there, saying,
stop dinking around and just cook.
Praise all, everything will be fine or whatever. He needs to get in and leave that guru off to the side, like Sean Payton wants him to do, and just play some football.
Right. Another name I think running back wise that they could look at, who should be there by the time that they're picking. Obviously, they're, like I said, they're picking at the top of the third round. They're picking early, obviously in the fourth round as well. On day 3, they've got the 6th overall pick on Saturday. But Rashawn Johnson, speaking of Bijan Robinson, his backup at Texas, Rashawn Johnson.
That's a name that I should have mentioned as well. I've got.
He's a guy that should be there.
Yes,
and he's 85 broken tackles over the last 2 seasons. On only 8, that's the highest broken tackle rate in the country in the last 2 years in college football. 85 broken tackles on only 189 attempts. Basically, 1 out of every 2 carries, almost, essentially. 1 out of every 2.5 carries, he's breaking a tackle from a guy. You can't bring the guy down with just one.
Maybe that tells you that he needs to be able to get out in space a little more.
And that's been the fun. When he's been healthy, that's been the fun of watching Javonte Williams, is that he's so damned hard to bring down. He is such a violent, hard, difficult to tackle runner. Bringing in a guy like Rashawn Johnson, who can also run that same style, would be a real fun move for them, for the Broncos. The only other area that I really see that, on offense, that they really need to probably bring somebody in, I'd like to see them bring in a center. But again, it's a weak draft class. Being a weak draft class in the interior offensive line is can be a double-edged sword, depending on how these NFL GMs want to play this. It's a shallow position. So do they jump early and use all those guys up that are worth taking? Or because they're not as talented and don't have those early round grades, do they then somehow last longer? I'm not going to count on that kind of thing. I don't know if they can find an impact center in this draft with where they're.
Well, you're not going to find an impact center in the third round to begin with.
Right. That's what I mean. With where they're picking,
so
I think Tippmann from Wisconsin. I think Michael Schmitz from Minnesota. I think the top centers are gone by the time they pick in the third round. So I'm not sure they necessarily have the firepower to be able to take that this season and run with that. We're going to take a break then real quick. We're going to listen to our Manscaped spot there and our friend Daniel Mader telling us all about that. And then when we come back on the other side, we're going to hit that NFC West finally, and we're going to get to Kevin's team here, the Seahawks. But first off, as we said, let's hear from our good friends over at Manscaped.
Spring has sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the best tools for some spring cleaning. They've already helped you tidy up all the nooks and crannies of your body's basement, but this year, Manscaped can help you get the perfect presentation on that beautiful face with the new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Make sure you look your best this spring by using code BELLYUP20 to get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped.com. It's time to tame your mane with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. The sun is peeking back out, which means you'll have to show your face in the daylight again. So use the kit to make sure your scruff looks award-winning, whether you got glorious beard flow or some smooth, sleek cheeks. The kit starts off with the Beard Hedger, a waterproof cordless trimmer with a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more messy drawers full of add-ons. It also comes with the titanium-coated T-blades that are tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to a single-stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. The Beard Hedger is a high-tech piece of art in a travel-size package with a long-lasting battery, universal charging, and a strong motor. So what are you waiting for? Save 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BELLYUP20 at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the promo code BELLYUP20 at Manscaped.com. Focus on the face and use the Beard Hedger Pro Kit for the cleanest look in the game.
There we have it. Like we said, get over there to Manscaped.com. Use that promo code BELLYUP20. Get yourself a good discount on some great gear, some great products. You don't have to just spend it on the tools if you're not a weed whacker type guy. They've got plenty of beard oils and shampoos and body washes, things like that. So get on over there to Manscaped.com. Help our partners out. Help us out.
Gotta give a thumbs up to Manscaped, because I went to the my mailbox the other day and had a delivery from Manscaped. I didn't know I was coming, so I was quite pleased with that. So Manscaped, thumbs up all the way around.
Heck yeah. All right. Moving on here now. Let's look at the NFC, the NFC West. Now,
right.
We'll start at the top there with the 49ers. Your second favorite team. Maybe second favorite team to see lose. Whoever's playing the Seahawks and the 49ers. Let's see them lose. Again, a team without a ton of holes. I mean, they bring in Christian McCaffrey last season. They somehow keep plugging the hole at quarterback, like the old story of the kid sticking his fingers in the dam and all the leaks in the dam. Somehow pulled that off. Now, obviously, it caught up with him in the end there when you've literally got every quarterback on your roster injured, and Joe Montana has arthritic knees, and Steve Young has a studio job. You can't bring anybody else in. They just ran out of luck at the end there. but not a team with a ton of needs offensively, especially at
No.
the skill positions. Okay.
No.
But also a team, we're talking about a team that one of the strengths of the 49ers, attack last season was the play of their offensive line, the number 7 ranked offensive line, according to PFF. Now they lose a couple of guys along that line, including Mike McGlinchey, their right tackle, who goes to who moved out of Denver. They still have the possibly best tackle in the world at Trent Williams at left tackle. But right tackle right now, they're looking at trying to start maybe Jalen Moore or Matt Pryor. Now, that's a position I could see them going at. Now, again, with all the moves that they made, though, last season and the last several seasons, the trade up for Trey Lance took them out of the first round for a while. The trade for McCaffrey only exacerbated that issue. So this is not a team with a lot of high draft capital. They don't have a pick until the 36th pick in the third round.
Right. They have no first or second round pick.
No.
They got 3 third round picks, but
3 third round picks that are essentially fourth round picks because they all come after 32. They've got 3 basically compensatory picks at the end of the tail end of the third round.
99,
and then they don't
101,
pick
and
again
102.
Yeah. Then they don't pick again to the fifth.
If you're a team like the 49ers, that you could take 3 third round picks and turn them into starters.
Right.
They have that. They seem to have that ability. So.
Exactly. So this is a team that needs a tackle. I think they probably need a guard as well. Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford aren't great options. Spencer Burford, especially, I think is a guy that's a replacement level player at guard. So I really think they should and need to look at offensive line in this draft.
They will.
But here's one of my here's maybe a curveball. Fantasy wise, I know we don't like talking about these guys in fantasy, but they are looking at they're going to run Zane Gonzalez out at kicker for a team with a high-powered offense, ostensibly a high-powered offense, who we think is going to score some points. Okay, this is a kicker position that should be on your fantasy radar. Okay. Does Zane Gonzalez move the needle for you, though, or is kicker a position they should look at possibly taking a guy in? What say you? You go ahead. You take that.
Okay. That's not a position I was really looking at for them, but
it's not a position anybody necessarily looks at. Unfortunately.
And so I think that, with a bunch of later round picks, they're not the Raiders and taking a punter in the first round. So that's a situation that could work out for them. And if you're going to have 3 third round picks, maybe you do that.
Right. I mean, now there's not a ton of guys out there right now that look like they're top kicker type prospects. But I mean, you've got Jake Moody out of Michigan, who only kicked 82% in college. But he's perfect on
Michigan. You got to give him some points for that, don't you?
Yeah, perfect on his point afters, and he played in Michigan. He kicked at Michigan, right? He doesn't have a real big leg. Okay, you've got Chad Ryland out of Maryland, possibly. He's got a bigger leg. He's got a little bit bigger leg than Moody does. But again, made less than 80% of his kicks in college. There's not a ton of great picks here. There's not a ton there's not a knockdown, lights out prospect like there has been in other years there's definitely not a Sebastian Janikowski here where you're going to consider taking him anywhere near above the 5th round. But this, like we said, this is a team. San Francisco doesn't pick until round 3, pick 36, but then they've got 11 picks after that. They've got an absolute
you can do all kinds of different
metric
things.
F ton of picks.
Absolutely.
At the end of the round.
And let's say you hit on 6 of those.
Right.
You're in good shape.
anywhere. If you get
Anywhere.
half of your
In any
special teams
position,
guys
if
off
you
of
get
that
on 6
draft,
out of 11 after the
Right.
third round,
right?
or third
You
round and after,
get a bunch of backup safeties and linebackers and late wide receivers that can play special teams for you, and then
Right.
be successful when you're talking about picking where they're picking right now. But
Right.
I just when they're not when we're not talking about the type of draft capital that other teams have, when we're talking about such low picks, I mean, yeah, hey, why not take a shot on a kicker to push Zane Gonzalez? Zane Gonzalez he's a professional kicker. He should be kicking somewhere in the NFL this year. I just don't know that I'm thrilled about the idea of him being the kicker for San Francisco all season, when this is an offense that should score some points. And honestly, until Brock Purdy's healthy, or unless Brock Purdy's healthy, or unless Trey Lance turns into Trey Lance that they thought he was going to be when they traded up for him.
That's why
early in the season, especially, they may need to kick the ball a lot.
Right. And I hear, these rumors that they're looking to maybe move Trey Lance and stuff like that. I think that's no.
Well, they pulled in Sam Darnold. They've got an option.
Neither of them are healthy. So, and Purdy, is he a flash in the pan, right? Or is he the second coming of Joe Montana?
I like Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy is and should be their starter if and when he's healthy.
But I think that if you can have two, you're not spending any money on the two guys. They're on rookie contracts, both of them.
Not only are they on rookie contracts, Brock Purdy is on Mr. Irrelevance contract.
Right. He's on it.
He's not. You don't even have to worry about a 5th-year option for him yet or anything. He's not going to cost you $20 million per year for 5, 6, 7 years yet.
Right. So
I
think you keep both of them around and just make sure one is healthy at least.
Right.
And then, the other guy's healthy as well. Then maybe we make the move.
There we go. Let's move north from San Francisco. Let's get to your team finally that you've been waiting to talk about, because I want to know, you've got the inside scoop, or you should have a lot more of an inside scoop than I do here sitting in the upper Midwest. Seahawks. Here's my list of what I wish they would look at here in this draft, or what I think they could and should look at, fantasy wise. But then I want to hear where you think you're going and what you think they're going to be doing here. Wide receiver, I see as a major need for them in terms of at least depth, if nothing else. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett have an argument to be the top two, in terms of when you're looking at top two in the wide receiver room. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett might be the top 1-2 combo in the game. Cincinnati might argue with that a little bit, but DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are solid. After them, though, there's almost literally nobody in that.
How does it get?
I mean, there's literally nobody else in that room. D. Eskridge. We're not going to talk about D. Eskridge because no one else is. They're not talking about it.
Let's please not do that.
Center, I see as a position where they could stand to upgrade. But again, it's a bad interior offensive line.
There for you.
There we go, though. Okay. And again, a team that's got the luxury of 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. I mean, this team is going to be picking a lot here in the early rounds. They've got 5 picks in the first 2 days. So, I mean, this is a team that if they decided, say, with their second first-round pick or their first second-round pick to take one of these shallow talent pool interior offensive line guys, they're not out anything, because they've got the 5th overall pick thanks to the Russell Wilson trade and the Denver Bronco collapse.
Yeah.
And I know you don't want to hear this, but quarterback is a position that they could decide to look at, especially if all the chips fall just right. What's your take on the Seahawks? Where do you think they need to go? Where do you think they will go here in the draft? Floor is yours.
Well, at number 5, and the good thing about all these quarterbacks, right, that slides some players back to you that would have normally maybe gone high, at the top of the draft. And so I think the only player that they can reasonably look at that won't be there, Will Anderson will not be there at number 5.
I agree.
And if he is, somehow, then there's nothing
to the front
further
table.
to discuss.
Yeah, no.
All right. So, but we'll talk about the team in a little bit, about who could determine where Will Anderson is going to go. But when it comes to that number 5 pick, their defense was almost the undoing of their entire franchise last year after they hit on Smith and everything else. And their rookie running back comes in, saves the day and everything. But their defense, we're talking about the team that used to have the Legion of Boom. And it was the Legion of just this past year. All you have to do is look at the game that they played against the Raiders, and Josh Jacobs ran all over them.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a tough game to watch.
Yeah, it was a tough game to watch, especially.
I'm not even a Seahawks fan.
I'm of course, Seahawks, there it is. Not a Raiders guy. They used to be in the same division as the Raiders, so that's built-in hate for them. So that was
I'll bet we have viewers that have no idea that even was a thing. The Raiders and the Seahawks used to be in the same division.
They used to be in the same division. We could have easily been talking about them in the AFC West with the Broncos. And
a couple of teams wearing silver back in the 80s.
That's right. So regardless of that, so at number 5, the guy that I'm hearing that's attached to the Seahawks more than anyone else is Jalen Carter.
Yes.
And out of Georgia. And so, and the reason why I'm hearing that is because if there's a coach that can get him to his maximum potential, Pete Carroll is that coach. So it'll be very interesting to me if they, and I also heard they might trade back, but I think they'll stay there. They earn that number 5 pick. So it might be Jalen Carter and might be Wilson out of Texas Tech. And you wouldn't think of defense out of Texas Tech, but he was all over the field for them. So if they've got their pick out of those 2 guys, and if Jalen Carter slides back behind the Seahawks,
jump on
then Jalen Carter really got some issues.
Yeah. If they don't take him, if he's still there after they go, then we know that teams know more than we know about the whole situation, the whole legal situation, and the problems that happened down there that have caused this
because
preliminary slide for Jalen Carter.
Right. One day after the title game, Jalen Carter was the number 1 prospect. In all of college football. Right. And then of course, he decided he was going to do, he was going to go join his buddy Vin Diesel out there on the road and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And had that whole issue. Then he showed up at his pro day. And it completely out of shape, and it didn't work out. So there
are definitely questions
no
right now
that.
about his commitment and about his
right and
off-field conduct
really
and his makeup, his mental makeup. I think
commitment and football is A plus B.
Right. Right.
So, but as I said, Pete Carroll is the guy that has raise people's commitment level up just because of who he is and all that. So Jalen Carter at number 5, if he's what we expect him to be, that's going to work out great. They need help on that defensive line on the edge. So that works out well for me. If they call Wilson's name, then that's cool with me because my last name is Wilson. And so then I could have a jersey with Wilson on the back that's not
that's not an antique,
right?
Not a collector's item,
right? So either one of those 2 names works for me. A quarterback at number 5 does not work for me at all. And just like last year when they were talking about doing that when they had the 1st round pick and they took Cross, which worked out extraordinarily well.
Worked out very well.
Yep. And then in the 2nd round, they resisted that call again. And so that all worked out for them. So let's push that aside right now. So they get their defense. And then on pick number 20, this is who I like. Osiris Torrance.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talk about offensive guards are iffy, but not him.
No.
And so at number 20, I really like that. They got their offensive tackles a year ago. They get him. Well, he's not a center. I talked about center a minute ago.
Move him on the inside. That's fine.
Right.
Help out your center.
If they can do both of those, they solve a lot of problems.
That solves a lot of problems for them. Osiris Torrance is not built like an interior lineman, by the way. He's about 8'7" and 523 pounds, but he moves like the wind. Osiris Torrance, he's a big boy.
This is the guy that allowed no sacks.
Yes.
No sacks. You show me anyone else that can say that.
If there's one interior offensive lineman that we end up seeing come off the board on Thursday, I think it's him. Regardless of teams' needs at center or whatever else, I think if there's one interior lineman that comes off the board, I think it's him. If there's more, obviously he'll be one of them. But, I like that name for them in terms of shoring up that offensive line and improving it. It's the 27th ranked offensive line in football. You've got nowhere to really go but up. The two rookie tackles that they started last season actually acquitted themselves pretty well.
Right.
I think they've made that not a need.
Without those two guys.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
But I think they've made tackle not a need, but I think that the interior of that line really could still help.
If they take a tackle, I'm slapping him, the coach and the general manager.
Unless it's somebody like now, like I said, you have maybe more insight into what their organizational thinking is or what their direction might be than I do. But it wouldn't be the dumbest thing, I don't think, depending on how the board shakes out. If they ended up with, say, a Skoronski from Northwestern and moved him inside, not as a tackle, but as an inside.
At number 20, he's not going to be there at number 20.
He won't be there at 20. He won't be there at 20. And I think 7, I agree with you. The defense, and it's specifically that defensive front, is too big a need for them to skip at 7, unless they get some kind of crazy offer.
Your need and the player, come together.
Unless something weird shakes out in the top 5-6 picks where all of a sudden that number 7 pick is really coveted. People want to move up and you can maybe gain something by jumping back a little bit.
I've heard that the Seahawks want to jump back a little bit, and they may well do that. But
that's been a John Schneider.
Schneider. When you come and talk about John Schneider, you don't know what exactly he's going to do.
No, but trading back is definitely
he lost his magic there for a while, but he gained it back last year.
Yeah, no, I have complete confidence in John Schneider. There are plenty of other executives in this league I second guess before I second guess John Schneider. All right, so you really do not think, if the weird unthinkable happens and one of these top 4 quarterback prospects is still there on the board at 7, you don't think they're going that direction?
At 5, actually.
You think? Well, you're right, at 5.
No,
you don't think. You think they're sold on Geno Smith for the short term, and they're comfortable with Drew Lock
for the short term. They better be.
They just signed the guy.
They just gave him a huge contract, so they better be. And so. And you could ruin your entire draft if you take a quarterback and he's not the guy. So, that's not a need for them.
We're about to find that out over here in Green Bay.
We're about to find out. As we can talk about tons of examples of quarterbacks in recent days, not only the ancient past, but recent days.
The team we just talked about, San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. That have not worked out. So I think the defense is too big a question for them to mess around with the quarterback position at number 5.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Wilson does not want to see a Mitch Trubisky in Seattle.
Don't want to see it. And because
all right.
All these guys have question marks, even at the top of these quarterbacks have question marks attached.
Right.
So I'm not seeing it.
All right. Let's move on now. Let's look at the Rams, Los Angeles Rams. Again, like I said, this is a team, F them picks. They went all in. They won their Super Bowl. It worked.
Do you know when the last time they picked number 1? When that was?
When's the last time they had a first rounder?
They have not picked first since 2016.
Right. But
and that was a quarterback who happens to be the
Jared
Detroit
Goff.
starter now.
And who took them to a Super Bowl.
It took
We
them
should
to a
say.
Super Bowl, and everybody was, apricots and rainbows
Right.
and unicorns and whatever else you want to talk about. And now they don't have a first-round pick, I guess, until like 1 year before the sun explodes.
Right. Yeah.
So,
My 3-year-old, my 5-year-old will be adults wondering why don't the Rams ever have a first round pick? But it did work. They have been to
got
2
the
Super Bowls
championship.
since that first round pick with Jared Goff.
Jared Goff.
They have been to 2 Super Bowls. They have won one. A lot of people would take that in the last 10, 12 years.
Right.
Okay. But and it's a team that had the number 25 ranked offensive line. Their offensive line was absolutely terrible. A position that had been a strength for them during that run of success.
It did.
But terrible offensive line. Their defense, likewise, was not great, even with Aaron Donald. One man can't play for the other 10, right? That's how it works in football. It's not basketball. You can't rely on one dude, to do it for you.
No.
But fantasy-wise,
Michael Jordan, okay, basketball.
If Matt Stafford can be healthy, and that's obviously an if. If Matt Stafford is healthy, Cam Akers looks to be completely recovered from his Achilles injuries.
You're ready to write him off. Then
I was the leader of that train. I was the engineer of the right Cam Akers off train.
Well,
and
if you were an engineer,
my ass wrong.
If they still had cabooses, I would be in the caboose right now.
we were both on the train, just different ends.
And actually, because I added him to my team at the end of last year,
right,
and it worked.
Yeah, it did. No, Cam Akers looks like he can be a running back in this league and a good one. We saw it his rookie season. We were like, everybody got excited for it, but then the terrible injury hit, and we thought, maybe we'll just never see Cam Akers. And then he came back and actually looked really, really solid. So I don't see that as a giant need for them. He was good enough. They let Darrell Henderson go, and Darrell Henderson's still twisted in the wind out, on free agent land. He still
Darrell Henderson is the guy that I was thinking was going to be okay, maybe better than okay.
Same here.
And then
same here.
Who knows where he is right now.
And he's still young. Darrell Henderson's only 24, 25 right now. Darrell Henderson's not old yet. But yeah, Cam Akers makes running back not a need for this team. And Tyler Higbee, Bryson Hopkins. I mean, they've got some guys at tight end that make that not a need as far as what I can see. If Stafford's healthy, quarterback's not a need. Plus, they're paying him, Pope money to play for them. But wide receiver after Cooper Kupp, I don't see a ton on this team to be excited about. Van Jefferson is still there.
The crash and burn that is Allen Robinson is no longer there either.
He's gone. Yep. Nope. He's in Pittsburgh now. So you're looking at behind Cooper Kupp, you're looking at Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, Tutu Atwell, and Lance McCutcheon.
And I was burned big time by Van Jefferson, so I'm not going there.
Yeah, he's done. Call it off.
Absolutely done.
So, now again, F them picks has meant that they don't have a first rounder, but they do have a second round pick. They do pick at 2-5.
Right.
They're not completely bereft of draft capital here this season. 2-5, 3-6, 3-14. So they'll have 3 picks on day 2, including, like I said, the 5th overall pick on day 2. I mean, there's still a lot of talent available at 2-5, especially this year.
Yeah.
It's really the 2-4 because of the Miami thing. But wide receiver is the one position I think where fantasy wise, we could see the most benefit if they went and got a weapon there at wide receiver. What say you there on the Rams and what they need to do or should do?
They definitely need to address that position. Unfortunately for them, as we've talked about, no one really blows your skirt up. So I've got them taking a defensive player with that second round pick. And as you mentioned, They need somebody else on that defensive line. And so I'm going to add Isaiah Forkey, the edge rusher out of Notre Dame, that's going to come off the board in the second round.
Give
And
Aaron
so
Donald
now,
a hand finally.
yes. And so Aaron Donald and him, that could work a lot. And if he's off, maybe DJ Turner, cornerback out of Michigan, up there in your territory.
There you go.
So that second round pick, maybe some of the guys that we've discussed previously, they could do that. But their defense is like getting old right before our eyes. So it really is. And so I see them going that way in that second round. Maybe Downs, as we talked about earlier, out of North Carolina, was a guy that they could look at. And so if we're talking about fantasy, of course we are, then Downs, I think, would excite some people and in fantasy, because you've got Cooper Kupp over on the other side, and they have to put like 4 defenders on him. And I haven't heard anything about it. I assume he's going to be fully healthy coming into the season. So you put a wide receiver over on the other side, not named Jefferson, then you've got something that you could look at when you're on the clock in your fantasy draft, your rookie draft.
Right. All right. Yeah. Hey, I like your idea of getting Aaron Donald some help on the defensive side early there. They don't pick, like we said, they don't pick until round 2, pick 5. They've got a pair of third round picks though. A guy that,
you could do some damage there in the third round.
You can if you play your cards right. Now, most of the top, like say edge guys or, pass rushers or whatever, are going to be gone by the time that they get to round 2-5. But a guy that might still be there would be somebody. And hey, kind of from their neck of the woods, obviously, would be like Leatu Latu from UCLA.
Yes.
A guy that had some injury, things that cost him some of his college time. But when he gets on the field, I mean, he's strong, he's quick, he plays with high motor. That's a guy that might still be there when they pick there in round 2 that could help them out in terms of that defensive front and giving Aaron Donald a hand anywhere. In terms of wide receiver, yeah, I agree with you. Somebody like a Josh Downs here at that same pick, if he were still available, could really help them out. Now, once you start getting into the third round, now you're talking more dart throws everywhere. Obviously, your top edge guys are way gone by then. Your top wide receivers, even in a low wide receiver, even in a down year for wide receivers necessarily, your top wide receivers are gone. But they could help themselves out, I think, at either one of those 2 positions. I agree with you completely there. Let's wrap up real quick here with our look at the NFC and AFC West here. Let's look at the Cardinals. This is a team that seems to have no direction right now.
No, they have none. And this entire draft is going to pivot on what they do one way or the other.
And that's the thing that makes them really interesting. This is a team that has needs up and down the board. They have no direction as a franchise. They're in complete transition, front office wise, coaching wise, roster wise. We have no idea if Kyler Murray is going to be healthy to start the year.
Who knows? Who knows who wants to play there?
Right. 24th ranked offensive line, the number 23 DST in football last year. They were not solid anywhere across the board.
And just ask Kyler Murray what he.
And their absolute best player, that I don't think anybody would argue with, their absolute best player in DeAndre Hopkins wants out, and is expensive enough that they may need to trade him out and get rid of him just to have some money to spend on elsewhere. But behind him, they've spent draft capital and they've made trades. They've got Hollywood Brown, they've got Rondale Moore. They've got some options behind him. They've also got Trey McBride and Zach Ertz at tight end, so they've got some options there in the receiving game. They're not going to take a quarterback because they still have Kyler Murray. Colt McCoy can hold the fort down if Murray is not healthy. They're not going anywhere anyway this season, so there's no reason to jump off of Colt McCoy or try and take a young guy, screw your whole future up. Keep your eggs in the Kyler Murray basket and just and run with it for this year. But a couple of positions on offense I think they could look at. One would be guard, but again, weak interior offensive line draft. And they're picking at 1-3. They're not going to take somebody. Now at 2-3, that might be a position that we could talk about. The other position I think they could look at from a fantasy standpoint, and again, not necessarily at 1-3, but would be running back. James Conner, is a good running back, when healthy, but he's getting older. He's not healthy ever. Behind him, Corey Clement has never proven to be much more than roster filler depth. As much as that pains me to say as a Wisconsin Badger fan. They've got Tyson Williams, who they brought from the Colts, who had a real fun fantasy flash for like 2 weeks a year or two ago. And Keontae Ingram, who I think we all want to be more fantasy-wise than he really is going to ever be. To quote an ex-Cardinals coach, he is who we thought he is, right? Denny Green. So running back and guard are two positions I think offensively where I could see them really going. But like you just said, the whole draft, it really looks, especially with the news that Houston is not locked in on taking a quarterback at number 2.
I was really surprised when I heard that. But
I think everybody was shocked by that, because to all of us out here looking at it, they have a need at the most important position in football, and they're picking number 2 overall.
Perhaps that's where the Raiders come in.
Right. But I think that, because of Houston's, at least whether it's a smokescreen or whether it's reality, because of Houston's public stance right now, that they're not locked in on a quarterback at 2, that makes that number 3 pick for the Cardinals like the linchpin of the entire draft right now.
It is.
Because if Houston does not move off of number 2
and picks Will Anderson, then who knows
picks
what's
Will
gonna
Anderson,
happen after.
Either way does not take a quarterback, all of a sudden that number 3 pick becomes the most expensive pick in several years here, right?
If that happens, then the Cardinals are going to trade out of it.
Oh, they're sitting in the catbird seat, and why would you not trade down? You've got so many needs. Nobody you're taking at number 3 is turning that thing around this season. You're already behind the Seahawks and the 49ers in that division, so you've got an uphill battle to even make the playoffs, regardless of what happens with your franchise this season. So why would you not back up, take a king's ransom for that number 3 pick from someone, even if, you could even talk Indianapolis into having to move up for 1 pick.
If they could trade out with number 4, Indianapolis, and still wind up with Will Anderson, I think that's their best case scenario.
Wouldn't that be crazy to see? And Indianapolis may be forced into that because of the Houston move.
Because they're afraid.
You talk about unintended consequences.
Right. 2 quarterbacks do go off in the first 2 rounds. Then Indianapolis is going to be, someone's going to trade into that number 3 spot and get our guy. So let's move up 1 spot.
Indianapolis for
a distinct possibility.
For what their needs are and for where their franchise is, Indianapolis sitting at number 4 is ouch, because they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't right now. And their entire strategy right now seems to hang on, what does our division rival in Houston do? They're waiting to see what Houston does, and what Houston does could really negatively affect them. Now, there's some talk that they're enamored with Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, depending on who you talk to. But man,
but you don't want to take. I don't think you want to take Will Levis at number 4 or number 3.
I don't think you do either, but
you can trade out.
I wouldn't have traded up to take Trey Lance or Mitch Trubisky either, and look what happened.
Right. And so maybe if you trade back a little bit and you could still wind up with him,
right,
that might work.
But the Cardinals, I think, sitting at number 3 right now. depending on what Houston does at that number 2 slot, the Cardinals could be sitting on the best asset in the entire thing.
Right.
Thursday night is going to be definitely interesting to watch from the beginning there. I think that a running back is in play for them. I don't think a running back obviously is in play for them at 1-3, but maybe at 2-3, somebody like a Jahmyr Gibbs or
I got a guy
Charbonnet.
for you.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
So in the 3rd round, how about Eric Gray out of Oklahoma?
There you go. Wait till the 3rd round. There you go.
Wait till the 3rd round, because in the 2nd round, I've got them addressing that wide receiver position, especially if they do trade Hopkins. Quentin Johnson.
If they could grab Quentin Johnson at 2-3, that'd be gigantic.
Yeah, so that starts, and if they trade back and maybe add some more picks or whatever, but Will Anderson is a guy that I think that they have a lot of needs, but he solves a lot of problems too.
Yeah.
He
really does.
Hesitant to trade, knowing that Will Anderson's sitting there, and he could be the top guy without all these quarterbacks. And you can get him at number 3. I don't know if I'm trading.
And they just had J.J. Watt retire. So,
right.
I mean, obviously pass rusher is a need there. I mean, everybody could always say pass rusher is a need because it's such an important position in this league. But, I mean, Arizona is one team where that's not just coach speak. I mean, that's
right.
That's
and unlike Jalen Carter, there are no question marks surrounding Will Anderson.
No, just plug and play, take off, and let's get this done. All right, real quick here, we're gonna listen to another friend from Belly Up talk about SeatGeek, and when we come back on the other side of that, you and I can talk about what we've got coming up here, and we'll wrap things up.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, but you can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
All right. Thanks to our friend Ryan McCarthy from No Credentials Required for that read there. Kevin, I'm excited. I don't know about you. I am so excited for Thursday night. I will be actually part of Belly Up Sports, draft night coverage there with Mr. Mater. Kevin, you'll be on there too. I'll be on there night 1 and night 2. But what else do you have coming up this week? What else do you have going on? Where can we find you? Just, let us know what's going on with Mr. Wilson.
Well, tonight, 7 p.m. Central, I will be on as normal on the baseball fantasy show, and so we're going to be talking tonight about what do we do, what's our strategy as far as the injured list spots, what do we do with that, and drops, holds, pickups, stuff like that. And I just had an article that was posted on Friday about. I wrote about players that we could pick up. I wrote about players we could drop. Who are players that we need to hold? And so that article is hot. Not so hot because it's Sunday now, but pretty hot off the press and lots of conversation. I appreciate all the people getting on there. We had some very nice conversations. What do you think about this? So I really enjoyed that. So that's available right now. And as you mentioned, of course, Thursday. And this is why I'm pretty jazzed up because I'm going to be on the call when first round picks 1 through 5. I'm right there.
You'll be right there when your team gets to pick. Yep.
And so we'll find out what the Cardinals do. We'll find out what the Seahawks do. And I'll be right there to be able to comment on it. So I'm looking forward to that very much so. And so hopefully you can join us tonight at 7 o'clock and be there Thursday. You might want to make sure, you got your drink. Okay. Right there. All right. Go. Thursday, because it's going to be a heck of a night.
All right. Yeah, no, I will be, I'll not joining you per se, but joining everybody else on the draft cast on Thursday night. I'm scheduled to come on literally the pick after Green Bay is scheduled to pick. So I'll be able to at least talk about it. If not, deal with their actual live pick, depending on what they decide to do here in the draft. But I'll be on night 1. I'll be on night 2 as well. So I've got that going on. I've got several draft articles coming out later this week. I'll have 2 coming out today, and I'll have one probably daily here coming out until Thursday on bellyupfantasysports.com. So get over there and check that out as well. I'm interested to watch you and Vince tonight. Say hi to Vince for me. I'm coming off my first.
Certainly do that.
I am coming off my first ever fantasy baseball weekly win.
Okay.
Against Mr. Vince.
Okay.
So
I'll have to point that out.
Yeah.
Don't be happy to point that out.
Don't rub it in too much.
Well, I can't do any promises because when he beat me in the playoffs last year,
he let you
there
have
was
it.
a lot of rubbing it in going on. All right, so I'll take any advantage I can. And
the rookie's first ever fantasy baseball win came against the guru, the master, Vince. So let him know that for me. But say hi to him for me. So. I'm looking forward to that episode as well, because again, that's an aspect of strategy in fantasy baseball that I'm still looking at and learning myself. Is how do I manage not just my injured list, but my bench. Is it better to have position players? Is it better to have a stable of pitchers to choose from? And with the injured list right now, I had Kyle Wright, I had Joe Musgrove to start the season, so I had those guys kind of languishing away on my injured list bench. Musgrove's coming off today, or it came off last night actually to make a start, which is nice. And I did well, and he did well.
Yeah.
But I've got a couple of long-term. I've jumped on some guys that I might have to wait on a little bit. I picked up Adam Duvall. He was dropped in our league because I need help in the outfield. I could use an upgrade in the outfield. And if Adam Duvall comes back off the injured list, and even if it's late May and has some and is playing the same way he played before the injury, I'd be sitting okay there. So I'm still learning some of that kind of strategy and what's the best way to manage my bench and my IL. So I'm looking forward to that tonight too. But definitely say hi to Vince. Definitely everybody come and check out Belly Up Fantasy's coverage of the NFL draft, Belly Up Sports coverage of the NFL.
Definitely want to check into that because it's going to be fun.
Right. And check both bellyupfantasysports.com and bellyupsports.com.
That's right.
Draft coverage all week leading up to that. But until then, we will see you next week at this time. We'll break down the first round of the draft here and talk about some of our favorites, favorite selections and head scratchers.
Favorites and not so favorite.
But until then, everybody, hey, have a good one. Slanjava, thanks for coming in, Kevin. And we will see you all next week.
Yeah, as always.